anti-life. Once the infinite Earths fall, there will be a crisis of absolute proportions.
Absolute crisis. We've been joking about it on this channel for a while, since the start of the Absolute Universe, pretty much. The idea that somehow DC Comics would manage to work that in some way. And they seem to have as a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing, but there have been some very strong reactions, so I thought it'd be kind of fun to just discuss and ponder where people are at with this event that they are teasing / have quasi-announced. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and it's an actual discussion video. Again. I don't know either. So DC launched its Absolute Universe in 2024, and in general, it's been doing fairly well. It's reached out and branched into some different spheres. You're hearing a lot of discussion about it, sometimes in arenas you may not expect. The ones that tend to get the most buzz in terms of general parlance, you'll see that will be Absolute Batman, Absolute Wonder Woman. If you get a bit deeper, you'll often hear people talking about Martian Manhunter because of the art, those kind of things. But it's out there. And you also see that depending upon the shop you're in, they'll be taking advantage of that with whole walls and that kind of thing. My shop is a whole wall, an absolute wall, absolute wall. So the Absolute Universe is doing something. At the very least, in certain circles, it's getting people talking. And time of recording, the first three that launched, that's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, it's been over a year, almost a year and a half. And as for the secondary batch, which was Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, for the most part, they've hit a year. Martian Manhunter had a hiatus, so it's a bit behind the rest. They've also started to cross over a little bit. You had these specials like Absolute Evil, where the villains started to meet. Then you've had the Absolute Batman and Absolute Wonder Woman. They each had a not quite crossover issue because you could read them independently, but they featured in each other's books. So the universe is starting to come together and you're starting to catch more and more references to some other things in the various books. So they're starting to interweave and interlock a bit more, which happens after books have been going on for so long. For some people, that's exciting, especially because there are some new readers who have come on board with this and this is their first time kind of seeing and experiencing that happen. For some, they're really enjoying it. Others have just been enjoying seeing this universe kind of truck along, do its own thing. The expansions for some have been interesting. There are more coming. There's Absolute Green Arrow, Absolute Catwoman, but it hasn't expanded also to the full extent that it could have. It could have gone far harder than it has. We could have absoluted everybody. But as of 2026, and at the end of D.C.K.O. number 5, so after all that wrapped up, there was a tease to an absolute event because the Absolute Universe did feature in D.C.K.O., which makes sense because it was a dark side centered thing and the Absolute Universe is a dark side created universe. So you did get to see the Absolute Trinity, but from further into that universe's timeline, and it hinted that things had gone quite wrong. Now D.C.K.O. is its own thing. It was DC's kind of tournament event that they did as a bit of a bridge in between All In and Next Level. So you had that event and at the end of it, it allowed for some shifts that are going to set up some of the Next Level books, and it also allowed Superman to vanish for a little bit, so there can be a whole Reign of the Superman, Where's Superman event. Now, if one was paying attention to the lead up to the event, interviews around it, and just even some of the foreshadowing from the first issue, it wasn't hard to glean who was going to win, which worked for and against the event because part of the way they marketed it was with brackets and those kind of things, making it seem like people should get really invested in some of the fights. But then for a lot of the issues themselves, the events weren't exactly one-on-one, I think, in the way that some people were anticipating. Whereas for others, they were fine with the way they had certain things, like everybody's got to find a weapon or double up. I know for some, they felt D.C.K.O. was lackluster or less than they were expecting. And then on the other hand, you had people who this was their first time following an event and they felt it was kind of cool and interesting to see all these characters come together. Everybody's coming at it from different vantage points. The event was pretty hype though, and as always when that happens, people are anticipating big things. In all fairness to D.C.K.O., it did change things in terms of at least setting up its next little arc for the DC universe. So it wasn't one of those events where everything got put back in the box. Its ending was very reminiscent of Dark Knight's Death Metal, especially with how Wonder Woman was handled in that and how Superman is handled in this. But with all of that as it may, at the end of everything there, we had Barry Allen and the history of the DC universe that he's been writing. So I hope that you knew he was writing that. Otherwise, that end reference came out of nowhere. But there is a new history of the DC universe where they've set up a status quo. The main 4 issues are just basically going down the timeline. There's kind of a frame of Barry there, but it's honestly not that necessary because basically what's setting up is the glossaries at the back, which I adore. I love glossaries, an index, all of those things to cast back to all of the long history that DC has. That was really exciting for me. I know some people were hoping that those books would have more of a narrative through line and structure. The one that had the most narrative was actually the Dakota incident, which was the milestone one. But that one didn't have an index at the back because it wasn't that kind of book. And I was sad. Where's my index? But by contrast, that one was a story. That one was about an alternate history that had come into being. And then Beacon going to get static because he's got to come back to the fore and write it and all that stuff and become the hero he was meant to be. It was a whole thing. But that frame of Barry writing this is utilized in that we see that all of a sudden there's new chapters and they're appearing and things are going to be turned all topsy-turvy. And that could be with an absolute crisis. At least that's the phrasing that they use. However, to me, it seemed much more like they were doing a tongue-in-cheek, playing with the fact that DC is known for its crises events at this point. They get memed on a lot because they've done a fair amount recently, but the original crisis events, they ended up being pretty much annual team-ups. Now, not all of them are called Crisis, but a fair amount of them are. And the first one is Crisis on Earth 1 and Crisis on Earth 2 from the year 1963. And that's where the JLA and the JSA meet, the crossings of Earth 1 and 2. And it's historic and symbolic, and it just sets them on a roll. If one looks at the phrasing in terms of paying homage to those kind of classic crises, then it's, I think, easier to get behind because a lot of those crises, some of them are serious and others aren't. Sometimes it's the Earths are about to collide and we've got to get the Spectre to push them apart. And other times it's, wow, some random people got some powers because they were possessed by aliens and now they're stealing lots of jewels and one of them wants to destroy all sports. So not all of them are super serious. We've been going through them on this channel. We're currently up to the Legion one, which I'm working on, but there's just a lot to say about that because it starts off, one issue's about an evil wizard, the next issue's about demons. It goes places. But all of this got me thinking because I saw some discourse around the kind of phrasing that Darkseid has at the end of this, with some people saying that it's too soon. They don't want it, that DC is milking the crisis concept dry. I think when people conceive of crisis, they're thinking of those earth-shattering Crisis on Infinite Earths, Infinite Crisis, Final Crisis, those kind of things. And personally, this just read to me as them playing with that history and less like we're about to alter and change everything. But of course I could be wrong and it could be a convoluted mess, which means we get to talk about it a different way. I would be okay with them going back to Crisis just meaning what it used to mean before Crisis on Infinite Earths, because they even used to joke about it being called Crisis back in the day. However, some people I know are burnt out and wary, and for some I think they're enjoying the way that the Absolute Universe is developing kind of on its own, and Crisis can kind of create this idea that, oh no, everything's gonna collapse and it's gonna be over. Now, when they've talked about it in marketing so far, they talked about it a bit at 2026's Comics Pro, and they discuss it more as an event. I'm about to do something riveting. I'm gonna read what they said. They didn't talk about it a lot at all, but what they did say about it was, it'll be a standalone series. It'll be easy for retailers to explain and fans to understand. You won't have to explain what a crossover is. And then they go on to say that it'll build the universe just like Absolute Evil did. There's something low-key condescending to me about you won't need to explain what a crossover is. I think people know what a crossover is. They're worried about it derailing everything, not about what it is. People do tend to show up for crisis-style events, although not as much as they used to, but I think for an Absolute one, they might. Also, just Absolute Crisis is a good name. It's fun to play with. Let them call it that if they want to, because it's a great name. I've really been enjoying watching the Absolute Universe evolve. There are some areas that are stronger than others, but it's been especially interesting to start to see it come together. And in some ways, based on the way that comics function currently, it was inevitable that they would come together at some point. The question is just, how much? If it can be in the sense of the way that the duet, as it was phrased, functioned in Absolute Batman, Absolute Wonder Woman, that was really strong because each of their books kept going, you got to see the other characters, and then they just moved on. So if you could kind of have it be that kind of event, again, like how the annuals used to be, not a universe resetting giant catastrophe type thing, but just a, hey, everybody's getting together and this is going to be a bit of a special different thing because you don't always see them together, then I think that could be fun and that could work. And now people have gotten a tease of the mainline and the Absolute verse kind of coming together. Although the thing is, the people who are wary, I get it. It's understandable, once bitten, twice shy. Also, when people talk about event fatigue and burnout, it's definitely real because they have been pushing events as a more and more regular thing, time of recording. And so for some, they just don't have that kind of special feel anymore, and one would have to actually come out and be special, I think, for some to be able to get behind that again. And I know for everybody what D.C.K.O did in that arena, it varies. To me, D.C.K.O did exactly what it said it was going to do. So in that way, to me, it delivered. But I know some people may have been expecting it to be a bigger, more bombastic kind of affair. They're set to slate this event for the end of 2026 so far. We'll see what actually ends up happening. But one thinks about how long the Absolute Universe has been going at this point. For them to have an event, if they manage to keep it contained to just inside the Absolute Universe and it's its own kind of series attached to it, I don't know. I don't think it's too soon. I think part of that is just that people don't want to see anything get messed up, or they don't want it to end, and which is an understandable concern. And there's always that thing where not everybody is reading every Absolute book, or they don't care about every character. And so if that's the case, then an event or that kind of thing kind of becomes less appealing. But my question to you is, where are you at with this idea? Do you think they're just having fun with that kind of branding and marketing? Or if they are you down for that? Or are you just not here? You don't want to be teased with crises. Stop it. Are you in the it's too soon camp? Are you in the it's fine? Things are going well, why not let them try and ride it while they can? I'm very curious as to what your thoughts are. I would love to hear them. I've been enjoying doing these more kind of casual videos. We'll see how long that lasts. As always, please leave all your thoughts down below and do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.